Hello and welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. My name is Ben Lüning, I'm the Master Taster of Whisky.com. This is Horst Lüning, the Senior Taster of Whisky.com, and welcome to the Beginner's Live Tasting 2024. And foremost, to all the beginners, get a bit of still water, demineralized or low minerals, something Evian, or just if you're not in an iodined or chlorine area, get some tap water. Yeah, if your tap water is any good. Yeah, today we are trying some beginners whiskey, and you can buy them if you come from the Netherlands or Belgium. You can buy them in a small box with small bottles, or you can buy them in big ones. And yeah, so you want to tell them what we got today?
Yeah, so first of all, remove this to have a wonderful view on these, very special bottles. The first we have is the Singleton of Dufftown, 12 years of age. This is whiskey from the Speyside, and it's an affordable whiskey, and it's matured in ex-sherry casks, and I choose that for the start of the sequence because it's very friendly, very welcoming, and and this had a struggle with the second one, which should have been probably the first to taste, but it's 15 years of age, has a slightly different aging profile. It's matured in a Solera vat, mixed in a Solera vat, and has this typical three-edge shaped bottle from Glenfiddich, and it's from the distillery where they boasts malt whiskey output in Scotland, or single malt whiskey output in Scotland. The third one is from the islands. It's from the Isle of Jura, and formerly it was called Isle of Jura, the whiskey, and now it's just called Jura. And this was matured in a red wine cask. So you have this red wine maturing in brick casks for adding more flavor to them. And those casks containing formerly the red wine are now used for the whiskey maturation. And the fourth one, I'm a little bit astonished that you choose that for a beginner's tasting, because this is a very special, very intense bottle of Laphroaig, very smoky, special cask series, pricely, a little bit over the top for a beginner's tasting, 10 years of age, very, very smoky. So this is something really special, and you're able to see those bottles are closed, and we will not open them because we have those small miniatures from this package.
Yeah.
So we are very Scottish today, so we're not spoiling.
Yeah, so you can still get them. You can watch the video later, so you can get them on Whisky.com if you come from the Netherlands or Belgium, and then you can try them and have a taste with us, although that might not be live if you need to order it now. So we are talking about, we are not trying just whiskey, but we are actually with premium whiskey, which comes 90% from Scotland. Really good whiskey is most Scotch whiskey. So what is actually Scotch whiskey? Here we come with a law. Yeah, Scotch Whiskey Regulations 2009. There's all the regulations as well. And I think 2019 they had a bit of an addendum there. So Scotch has to be made in Scotland, has to be matured in oak cask, has to be matured in Scotland, and has to be filled in Scotland as well. And so this is single malt Scottish whiskey, which we are trying today. All of them are. They are all single malt Scotch whiskey. Kind of, the best, the cream of the crop. What is also out there is Irish whiskey, which actually do have the Irish technical file from their Department of Agriculture. And then we do have something else from overseas. We have whiskey from America, we have corn whiskey, we have rye whiskey, we have bourbon whiskey, and that is defined by the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms. This is the alcohol part, which is then the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations, Title 27, Chapter 1, Subchapter A, Part 5, Subpart C, and that is defining what whiskey and all the
And
other...
you tell me that we in Germany have red tape.
The Americans are way far beyond us. Yeah, but the Americans do have that for bourbon. But as you know, Jack Daniels and George Dickel are not bourbon. They are Tennessee whiskey. That is something different. And Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, has a House Bill Public Chapter number 341, which defines the Tennessee whiskey, which is a special process of still, filtering their whiskey.
Yeah. So what you tell me here is that this is not just fun, it's serious business.
Serious business, yeah. It's regulation. So, but that is very different to what I'll bring you day after tomorrow. It's rum. This is highly regularized. So this has quality standards, and they are pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let me show you, there is not just these big whiskies that I've told you, the American, Irish and the Scotch. Here you see a map of all the whiskey distilleries in the world, and you can see a massive amount of distilleries. You can't see anything from Scotland because it's all red, because there are all distilleries there. Then we have Ireland, also pretty full. Germany is just that we are a German company, and there are a lot of small distilleries popped up in Germany during the crossing out of the agricultural subsidies of the EU. So there were popping up tons and tons of craft distilleries in Germany. There are a good amount of craft distilleries in America, but you can also see around of Kentucky is pretty red. There are a lot of distilleries there. And you can see Japan. Japan has also, I think now, somewhere around 15 distilleries.
They started in 1923.
Yeah, and they are pretty big. Yeah, and they are also very premium. So yeah, Japanese whiskey is getting pretty good. And they are now 3 in India, 1 in Israel, and I think South Africa is 1 or 2 or something. You've been there. And Australia is half a handful, and there's not that much else on the planet.
To be a little bit more in detail, you see the subcontinent of India. There are only 3 down there, but there's a lot more.
Yeah.
But these are single malt whiskey distilleries. These are the ones which are in our whiskey database on Whisky.com. You may have a look up and search for the whiskey distilleries, and there you find tons of pictures and videos according to those distilleries which we all visited and added pictures from. So there's a lot of information, so you can see how this whiskey is made, which you have on your desk.
Yeah, and now we come to how do you actually drink the whiskey then? So is it just like tumble it down the hatch?
Yeah. So this is very old style imperial measurements. So there is a dram, and the dram is a volume measure, and a dram is a fifth of a gill, and the gill is a part of a pint, I think a sixth of a pint, and then a pint is a part of a gallon.
We actually missed the quart, so 2 pint is a quart, and I think for three quart is a gallon or something, or 4 quart a gallon.
And if you're missing the ounces, the fluid ounces, so we are here with drams. And then they change regulations in Scotland. There was a big rumor up there when they changed from a fifth of a gill to a sixth of a gill.
Oh.
So, and then they went down from 35 milliliters down to 28 milliliters, and they kept the prices. Quel dommage. So it was very bad. So now we have 28 milliliters in a dram, and typically if you're pouring from bottles privately, then you have a typical dram is what you drink in a quarter of an hour or half an hour. Yeah. And in a pub where it's sold, you have these measures
but
which you use.
Also important is the kind of glass. if you have a...
Sorry. I got the wrong one. This is the wrong one. This had been the first. This is the wrong one.
Which one is the third?
Yeah.
The fourth.
So I talked about this bottle and was so
Okay. Yeah, so let me talk about the glass. You can see our glass is actually a very special kind of shape. What you need to have is a glass that gets tighter to the top, so the aromas that evaporate at the bottom have a big area that they can evaporate from, and then they get concentrated to the top, and you can nose them in a more concentrated manner and have more intense flavors in there. And then we also have a lip in the end that is to then spread it out, so you don't get one like sprinkle right down your throat and just messes you up, but it actually spreads it out, spreads it in your mouth. You can have all the flavors all around in your mouth.
Yeah, and having a lip on the top of the glass is quite difficult to produce, and so most of the glasses don't have that.
Oh yeah, that has a lot of implications. A stem, which is has a big bottom. You designed it. You tell it.
Yeah. So there's a big bottom here, so that it has a firm stand. So if you have a lot of glasses on the table and you have a tasting and figuring around, so that it won't fall over. Then you have a stem, so that you can have a look at the liquid, that you don't have a tumbler in your hand and don't see anything. No. Then you have the Cooper, which concentrates it to the top, and then you have a lip on top. And this is a crystal glass, so you see it's not an amorph, but a crystal glass, so you have a better view and it's shiny and wonderful. And if you want to have a constant appearance, then you're just cleaning it with clear water.
Yeah.
Don't put it in the washing machine, the dishwasher. So now we have the Singleton of Dufftown in our glass. This is 12 years of age at a price of 28 euros and 90 cents here in Central Europe, 40% ABV. So now you're able to tell more about this distillery.
Yeah, I've actually not been in there. But
so that's my turn. So Dufftown is a distillery in the Bell Corporation, and they produce mostly for the blended whiskey industry in the Bell's finest. And there's very few of that whiskey bottled separately as single malt. And because it's so rare in quotes, they have a lot of that so that they are selling it. So it's called the Singleton. And the Singleton, the name was formerly used for another distillery, but then they switched it to Dufftown. And Dufftown is the hidden capital of the Speyside in Scotland. We're soon coming to that. So it said Rome was built on 7 hills, Dufftown was built on 7 stills. So this is Dufftown.
Mm-hmm. So if you I've seen there's one from Belgium in there, and if you come from Netherlands or Belgium and you've got these whiskies in your glass, then please write down in the chat what you have in your nose and in your taste.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
What you're doing first is you nose on the glass, which we skipped a little bit during your tale. I smelled a lot on that whiskey. Mm-hmm. And then you have to smell a minute or two in front of tasting, really, so that you smell 1,000-fold compared to tastings. And in this smell, you have the first impression of the whiskey. Is it sharp? Is it well-rounded? Is it sweet? It is spicy? Is there a lot of oak in it? So this is the start you have. And here I have a wonderful aroma from the sherry cask they used. And there's a little bit of oakiness, not much, fruitiness, sweetness. It's really welcoming with a little touch of nuts.
Mm. Mm. It's a wonderful beginner's whiskey. Mm-hmm. For me, it's very creamy, very round, 40%. It's not burning at all. It has that petrocheminess, that sweetness, that fruitiness. It has berries, strawberries, and very creamy, and a little bit of spiciness. When you have it in your nose, it's very, very easy. When you have it in your mouth, you feel a little bit of that oakiness. You feel a little bit of that tannins that come from the oakiness. You feel a little bit of a nuttiness going on as well. So it's a really lovely beginner's whiskey. Feel free to just have it in your glass, but I actually like to now focus on, how's actually whiskey made? So what do we have in the glass? And whiskey is a very old, traditional distilled product, and it's basically a distilled beer without hops. So we start off with barley, and we malt the barley. This is nowadays made in big drums where you have the barley in there and you wet it before, and then you have to turn it so it doesn't get any mold in there. So it has to have fresh air coming through it all the time.
So this is the germination of the single corn.
So you wet it, and then it begins to germinate. What happens in there is then it actually turns the starch into sugar, what you want to have for the fermentation to produce alcohol. This is the very modern way. I show you the very old way, where you turn the malt so it doesn't always touch each other and begins to mold, but it actually begins to germinate.
So and from this you have your monkey shoulder.
If you do that all of the time, you get really cramped shoulder, and that is really bad for you. At the very far side of that room, you can see there is kind of a plow in there that you just pull through that. That's much better. And also there are now machines to do that. What you then have is you have a germinated corn or grain, and that you grist down, and then you put it inside the mash tun. The mash tun is kind of what it sounds like. You mashing it together to get a very, very liquid kind of pastry soup in there. Very, very sweet, because the malt is sweet and has a lot of sugars, and the temperatures inside the mash tun are kept at certain temperatures. Here's the inside.
It looks very weird.
Yeah, it's an old one. It's a very classical old style mash tun. And these temperatures that you drive first with 65, then with about 75, 80, in the end with 90. That gives enzymes within the grain the time and the power to actually split more of the starches and make it even more sugary. The plant actually wants to produce the sugar and then put them together into celluloses, which is the building for the plant.
The stem,
the stem.
Mm-hmm.
So actually it's just for the plant to grow, but we want to have the sugar. So sugary water it is, and then you fill it into the...
and you need these gears inside these to turn around.
To mix it, everything.
To mix it to get the sugar really out into solution to the water.
To mash it in. Then they end up in the wash bag. And the wash bags are big tanks, traditionally made of wood. There are also some stainless steel, and you mix it with the third component, which is yeast. We have barley, water, and yeast. And then we have the alcoholic fermentation. You have the sugar plus the yeast, and they produce alcohol and what is it called? Fermentation gas.
It's CO2.
It's CO2. And that is actually foaming. And you can see at the very top side of that video, you can see switcher blades. And they are usually spinning and striking down the foam so it doesn't foam over. So that ferments from 36 hours, 40 hours to even as high as a week of 120 hours or 160 hours, somewhere around there, depending on what kind of flavors you want to have. If you go really long, it goes into kind of fermented fruits, tropical fruits, that kind of style. If you go lower, you have more of a malty, grassy kind of spirit. Yeah, this gives you about 8% of alcohol. So you want to create the flavors here plus the alcohol. And they go then into the stills. So you have that 8% beer.
I'm really jealous about that picture.
Yeah, that picture was, we took about 50 of these pictures to just get it right. And yeah, this is Glenfiddich, our next whiskey. And here you put the fermented beer without hops into the wash still and just burn it and get about an intermediate spirit of about 20%, 25% alcohol. And then it goes into the spirit still, which is then highly measured, and you have the foreshots and the feints, which is the last part, the bitter part. The foreshots are really like window cleanerish, and you have the hard piece, which is the best part. And you want to really measure with the columns on the left, with these beakers on the left. You want to measure where you are and then cut the whiskey so it has actually a really, really good whiskey. What you then have is about 70, 75%, 80% whiskey, and that is then a little bit watered down to about 63.5, and then put into big.
This is a classical spirit still, looking quite old. It isn't, because you can see there had been handles on top of that to switch the outlets of the liquid flow to the receivers, and now they have step motors on top of that, so that they can switch it over
by computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But when you come out, you have diluted it down to 63.5% ABV, and then you put it in big warehouses, where you can see here at the forefront, you see these warehouses, and they're all filled with a lot of oak casks. We'll come to later what kind of regulations are about oak casks there. But we have a lot of these oak casks, and you can see at the bottom is how an oak cask normally looks like. It has an oak lid as well, and they are charred from the inside, and then you lose a bit of alcohol and liquid, also water, to the air, because an oak cask is not 100% airtight. So here you can see through this glass how actually the liquid levels is dropping. That means you lose something, and that is called the angel's share, as the vapors rise up to the heavens and the angels get that share of the whiskey.
You took this whiskey, this picture at Glenlivet. So I took nearly the same picture in Ireland. So I thought this would be the Irish picture. No,
is that Glenlivet?
It's Glenlivet on the left-hand side.
It says Glenlivet, but I thought that was Glenmoray, but I don't know. No, it says at the bottom it's Glenmoray. I don't know why they have a Glenlivet.
Glenmoray. Okay, so it's Scotland.
Definitely Scotland. Yeah, but they did it there as well. And you can see the non-smoking and
regulations.
Regulations, yeah. So our next one is more of a it has a lot of finished whiskies in there, which is very interesting.
So next one is the Glenfiddich, 15 years of age, with a price of €47.90 here in Central Europe, and it's 15 years of age, so it's 3 years older than the 12-year-old. That doesn't have to say it is more mature or less, depending on the whiskey and the cask, of course. And this one has a special maturation, type of mixing. So they mature this whiskey in different casks for 15 years. Then they mix those casks into a huge vat. And from this vat, they put it into the bottle. It resides several weeks, up to a month, in this so-called Solera vat. And this Solera vat is a little bit stolen from the Spanish people down in Jerez, because there they have this Solera maturation, where you have casks in rows on top of each other, and every year they bottle the half of the cask in the lowest row. So they just dropping half of the level out of those casks, and then they refill it from the second layer, second row of casks. And then the second row is just half filled, and then from the third row down. So you have a flow from year to year, from cask to cask, mixing up with that what was formerly in that cask. And here they putting those casks all together in this big tens of thousands of liters containing vat, and drop half of that for bottling. And this means that you always have a little bit of the first filling still in that whiskey, so that the taste of the whiskey isn't that much changing from batch to batch. This is the Solera, or what you intend with the Solera, that you do not have a change from batch to batch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of a roundup of what you can expect from maturation in whiskies. It used to be traditional to mature them in sherry casks when all of the British Navy used to run on sherry. And then there were also a bit of rum casks, or nowadays the standard cask is pretty much a bourbon barrel. And now you are also allowed to use fortified wines like sherry, but nowadays, since 2019, they actually opened it up and said, okay, you can go tequila, you can go mezcal, calvados, cachaca, but you're not allowed to go for gin, cider, and other type of fruit, because they changed the character of the whiskey too much. That was the reasoning. Before that, beer and all these other spirits were also too hefty, but nowadays they're a bit more loose, and they say, yeah, that is kind of whiskey as well. This now is, I think it is a mixture between fresh casks and a few sherry casks as well. Bourbon, Oloroso, and fresh oak casks.
Mm-hmm. I think those regulations were made because the casks rose in price like hell. So there was a cask price inflation extremely, and they said we have to have more casks for us, and they might not be that expensive. And we will see with the third one that they as well use wine casks from all over Europe and rest of the world for the maturation, because oak casks are expensive.
Yeah.
Few $100, euros.
So Glenfiddich, I think, is the biggest distillery, single malt distillery in the world. Oh, and you can smell it. Why?
So this one has a completely different character. I'm lacking the fruitiness, the sweetness. I have a very fine vanilla in it. There's fruitiness, but not that strong. A little bit darker in tone, and very faint spiciness coming through. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice. The first one was very sweet and very creamy. This one is a bit more subtle. It has a lot of fruitiness. It has a good amount of vanilla. So you feel the ex-bourbon, you feel the fresh oak, which has a lot of vanillin inside the oak cask, which comes from heating up the oak cask, and that caramelizes the wood sugars, and that gives you a caramel vanilla taste in there. Also, very nice, lovely, fruity vanilla style whiskey. A classical Scotch.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. Mm-hmm. Now I find it right in this sequence. We thought about taking the Glenfiddich first because it hasn't those Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso sherry casks from the Dufftown, but this one is more mature, darker, deeper, more oak in it. Long aftertaste, already cladding my mouth. Yeah.
It's definitely not as very sweet as the first one. It has a good amount of oak, bittersweet sweetness to it, and a nice sherry touch to it. So the fruitiness is very, very well balanced with the sweetness and the oakiness. I really like it. It's, as I said, classical Scotch. Lovely Glenfiddich. But I'm really not that familiar with Glenfiddich, because Glenfiddich was one of the bigger ones that I really came in, was one of my last visits I did, and all of the Glenfiddich always went to Horst, and I just left with the other whiskies.
So Glenfiddich was the distillery I visited first, even before we started with our whiskey business.
Okay.
Because we were up there as tourists and visited us in 91 something, and it didn't change afterwards. So what I want to figure out here is, if you have a look at those bottles, they all look different. There had been a classic standard liquor bottle looking like this one, but not in green, but uncolored. And this was the classic liquor bottle in which all whiskey was bottled. And later on, when the amounts of whiskey sold rose up a lot, then they changed to a particular individual bottle. And the most fancy bottle here from this sequence is this Glenfiddich.
Triangular shape.
With a triangular shape in cross section, and all three sides stand for the ingredients. It's
water,
malt,
barley,
water, and fire in third, isn't it?
No, I think yeast. Is it? No.
I think fire. They said wrong. Yeah, I don't know. And then they have this V shaped on it. This is for the valley of the deer. Here, the sign of the deer is here, and Glen means valley in Gaelic. And Fiddich means deer, so it's the valley of the deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we're coming to the regions of Scotland. And here we have the map of Scotland. And down there, the white part is England. And the real whiskey is made in Scotland. And in former times, most of the whiskey was produced in the lowlands, because there 90% of the Scotch people lived in the towns of Glasgow and Edinburgh, which is the capital of Scotland. And they taxed the whiskey, of course. What does governments do? They tax everything. And they made an artificial line from Greenock in the southwest to Dundee in the northeast. And they separated the lowlands from the highlands. In the highlands, it was forbidden to produce whiskey, and in the lowlands, they were able to tax, so it was allowed, but nobody cared. And there had been a lot of very small distilleries in the highlands. And there were parts of the highlands on the coast where the tax excise officer was able to come by ship, so they taxed them up there as well. But in the Upper Highlands, there was in the beginning no tax, and starting from 1823, they had a new law which allowed them to take a license, pay for the license, and then produce. And the excise officer came a few years later. The railway was established in Scotland, and they came with the railway and by coach. Yeah, and these are the Highlands, and around 50% of all distilleries reside in the Highlands, or 40%, and they are separated into the Northern Highlands and the Highlands itself. And there's a geologic fault going from Inverness to the southwest through Loch Ness, and this divides the Northern Highlands from the Highlands, and those produce the very typical Scotch whiskey. And then you see these white part inside the Highlands. That is the Speyside, and the Speyside is a part where the River Spey flows through, main river, and all the feeding water systems from the mountains into the River Spey. All that region is called the Speyside. And in that, there are 50% of the distilleries from the mainland of Scotland reside in the Speyside. So there are a lot of distilleries. They are like pearls on a row. And our Dufftown and our Glenfiddich both come from this Speyside. And then we have the islands. There are the Inner Hebridean Islands and the Outer Hebridean Islands. Today we just have the Inner Hebridean, or the first one, it's Islay. Probably can go back, editor. Yeah, here we have Islay. And this island now has 8 or 9 distilleries. 9 are producing, I think, but bottling still less because they're not 3 years in operation. At least Port Ellen not. And they produce roughly half of all whiskies, of premium whiskies. And former times it was very, very smoky with the 4th whiskey coming from Islay. We taste today. And on to the northeast of Islay, you see the Isle of Jura. And there our 3rd whiskey comes from. Then we have the islands around Scotland. And this is not an official region of Scotland. We put them together because we think that the islands have a special way of producing whiskey. They taste a little bit differently. So we say the islands are a specialty and have a special region. And in 2009, they changed the regulations that you can write every region in front of the single malt whiskey or the Scotch single malt whiskey. So former times there just had been 7 regions like Lowlands, Highlands, Speyside, Campbelltown, Islay. I think that's it. And today you can say Arran or Orkney, Orcadian, everything. Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and our next whiskey is now an island whiskey. You have the Isle of Islay, and just north and northeast of that is the Isle of Jura. And first we had more of the fortified wines, but this is now what we said with there are a lot of type of casks you can use, and now we have a finish in red wine casks. Yeah, and I have a little bit of a section for beginners, and yeah, there are a lot of people who enjoy their whiskey with Coca-Cola or other Coke. So this is more whiskey drinking. We are into whiskey enjoying. Yeah. If you mix it with Coca-Cola, then you really try to kill the flavor of the whiskey, and probably you have a really bad whiskey and you just want to have it taste like Coca-Cola with alcohol, which is not a good idea. This is, we call it, drinking, or more, it's substance abuse, and most of the time, and to get drunk. And you shouldn't do that. That is not good for your health. Drink a less alcohol, but better alcohol whiskey. And the next ones are with ice. I can understand if people put ice in their whiskey if you live in Kentucky and it has like 40 degrees Celsius, which is, I don't know, 120 degrees Fahrenheit or something.
Not that much. 110.
110, then I don't know. And I can understand why you put it in there and get a bit more refreshing taste. But it's not good for the taste of the whiskey. If you're in your armchair and you're relaxing and you want to sip a really premium bourbon or a premium Scotch whiskey, then you would really cut out the ice, because the ice is so cold it numbs your taste buds and you can't taste the good Scotch. So Scotch is mainly enjoyed neat, or you can just add a little bit of water. You don't add like tons and tons of water, but you end up something like 10%. It just
watering down.
It just tastes like water with a little bit of flavor in there. It's just not good. So water it down to minimum 37 or 35 or somewhere around there. Below that is really just too much water in it. But usually there are just a few drops. which changes the alcoholic concentration within the whiskey and releases a lot of flavors. And it makes it usually some kind of fruity, some kind of sweet. And it really is nice. Try one glass with a few drops, try one with a few more drops, try one neat. It's just really up to you. With water, you can play with your whiskey. The Scottish always say, never drink whiskey without water and water without whiskey.
And not to spoil your whiskey with too much water, take a spoon. Take a spoon, put a few...
Yeah, if you don't have one of these very small bottles, take a spoon.
Take a spoon, put very demineralized or dead water, as I always call it, for diluting down your whiskey. And I would say you might go down to 35%, in extreme down to 30, but not less than 30%.
Yeah, 30 is watered down.
These three whiskies have 40% ABV. And
so
this
you
is
really don't need to water.
The legal minimum, and so here we do not dilute it. But the fourth one...
Yeah, if you have a cask strength, which is the fourth one, they really we're coming to that watering down part really with the last one. But which is strange, you said 40% is minimum for whiskey. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been all the time. No,
37.5, I think.
Used to be in the old days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm. And this is British law. The law in United States and other parts of the planet are different, but we are talking about Scotch here.
Yeah, but we have global corporations, and they tend to harmonize everything, so they are not losing money, so everything's the same. So 40% as a minimum is nearly everywhere. For
nearly
whiskey.
Everywhere.
Yeah. There are countries with 0% whiskey. we had one once.
It was really
wasn't
good.
good.
It was not good.
So this is the Jura Red Wine Cask finish at €29.90 here in Central Europe, 40% ABV, and again completely different to the other. And fruits, do now have a honey note, which I hadn't had the first time. So the taste will always change a little bit with your second and third sip on a whiskey. So one lays on top of the other, and I would suggest never have more than 2 whiskeys in an evening. So because the second one will always be influenced by the first one. So don't have too many different whiskeys, and of course do not have too much of whiskey, because it will paralyze your mouth and you won't taste anything anymore. So 2 drams in an evening will give you the best of your tasting experience, say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I have a little bit of aniseed in this here, and I don't know where it comes from. Little light. Yeah.
Now I do have it as well. This is a lot different to the first two. You have a bit of they are not as sweet as the others. Whereas the others, they all had the olorosa in there, fruitiness comes from there. And this one is really the grapes, the kind of the wine flavor, and a bit of that Jura distillery character with a bit of honey and a bit of fruit. And for me, it has, I did have, Germany is with mulled wine, and it really feels a little bit like mulled wine. Or is it mulled wine, the one you drink at the Christmas market in Germany?
I don't know.
I think it's mulled wine. The one with the spices in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Oranges,
cloves and spices come into the mulled wine.
Hot and minor quality.
Yeah. I think it's a German thing, or it's a European thing.
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Mm-hmm. This light, winey, juicy touch in it, but there's cacao in it. This light honey note, dark berries, cinnamon, an edge of cinnamon with not this sugary cinnamon from putting into your milk. No, the cinnamon bark, which gives a quite sharp taste. Yeah.
It's really much spicier than the other two. Now that I have it in my mouth, it's really hefty, and I have a bit of that anise seed that you said definitely in there.
Yeah. What we have to say to this bottle, it does not carry an age statement. So legally said, it has to have 3 years and a day of age, but typically they have older ages like 7 to 8 years, and they save some money for storing for cask, having it maturing less. But the lesser you mature, the more intense the whiskey stays. So there's this long time of maturation missing, where those unwanted substances are not removed from the whiskey. So this might be one reason why this whiskey is a little bit more intense, but the procedures used in the distillery are different as well. And this is a distillery established in 1810, so it's older than the other two, which I think was Glenfiddich was 1888, if I remember right, and Dufftown might have been 1823, something. Typically 1896.
Okay.
So they're a lot younger. So the
Younger.
more
20 years old.
rural original producing procedures are still in the Jura. This might result in a more heftier whiskey. Yeah.
They are just a little bit, more into their style of whiskey. I think that they could easily make a different whiskey, but they keep the tradition running.
Every distillery.
So very traditional.
Glenfiddich has one of the smallest distilleries from the big distilleries. There are ones with smaller ones, but from the
Small
big,
stills.
Small stills, yeah. And they have one of the smallest, but therefore they have those 36 something. I think they're up to 50.
I think they're 48 or something. No, 52. I think they have 53, but they're not. One is not working or something like that. Yeah. But the funny thing is, they actually bought used stills from a very famous, also very, very big distillery. When they built the distillery by hand, they didn't have that much money, and
he hasn't
it's
more
from
than a
McKellen.
handful of children. which
7
built-
boys and I think a couple of girls as well. So
And
they
they
built
built
it
themselves.
stone by stone. And he bought used stills from McKellen.
Yeah,
They're very, very similar to McKellen.
yeah, and the old lady, they stayed on the premise. She had a cottage there with an age of 103.
Oh.
She passed away. So, and it's still family run, the distillery, to say that. The others are most often bought by big corporations. So,
Yeah, they are still in good hands, and also they also belong. Balvenie also belongs to them.
but this family business is billions of revenues.
It's huge, yeah. So good. We're coming to the fourth whiskey, and for the fourth whiskey, I'd really like to tell you something about a production of the fourth whiskey, because they have a bit of a different production. I begin at the beginning of the whiskey production, and that is the malting. And you malt it, you wet the grain, you let it germinate, and in the end you have to dry it. And here we have the secret of why it is so smoky. It's a piece of dirt. No, it's a piece of peat, a special kind of dirt. It's peat is actually organic matter. You can see a lot of roots in there. That is not fermented, composted without oxygen. So not really composted, but actually, turned into organic matter without oxygen. I don't know the technical term in English. And so it really turns...
Anaerobe decay.
Anaerobe decay, that's probably the right word for it. And it really turns into carbon matter, which is then first peat, then lignite, then what is it, anthracite or
Yeah, first is coal,
coal?
and then anthracite.
Anthracite, yeah. So we are at the very, very first beginning step, and that is very wet and still has a lot of organic matter, and it's not really pure coal. And then you just burn it in a kiln, and that is very, very smoky because peat tend to be wet, and this, not fully combusted. If you not fully combust carbon, then you have phenols, and these phenols is what you taste as smoky. So a smoked ham has the same kind of treatment gone through. So here you see the whole peat tiles, and at the old ages they were not trying to make peaty whiskey because everybody was making peaty whiskey. Because they didn't have that much wood. Wood was expensive, and peat was everywhere. So
It was just labor to cut it.
labor to cut it. Cheap labor. And so back in the days, it was burning really hot and with flames. And today, you just put water in it so you get a lot of smoke in there, and comes up into this room, which is then the drying floor, which is really wet air for a drying floor because all of the wet barley malt is evaporating, and you can't step in because it's really, really smoky and really, really foggy in there. And if you step one step further, you get a lot of smoke on your foggy lens, also smoky lens, and it smells for days. and then you measure the ppm, the parts per million of phenols inside the malt. And here at Laphroaig, you do have somewhere around 45-50 ppm of smoke level. This is considered to be a high smoky Islay whiskey.
Yeah. So
And Laphroaig is really the stereotypic for that.
So this is from the Isle of Islay.
South Coast.
It's 10 years of age, and it's in a high proof. It's a cask strength with 58.3 ABV, and costs around 85 euros. But if you dilute it down to drinking strength, then you would end up not with 0.7 liters, but with 1 liter. And so it reduces in price a little bit. But this is, well, I would say this is no longer a beginner's whiskey. We added that to give you a hint how the specialties will lead you to. So therefore, this bottle is added to, and this is not the regular 10 years old. There's a regular 10-year-old, not that expensive, half the price, a little bit less, I think, than half the price, where you can taste that as well. Yeah, and in the beginning,
You've already poured it.
but to give it the right smell, I will add a little bit from the original, so that you have more.
But some people actually do like to have their whiskey opened for quite some time because
I don't like that. No.
yeah, some people do like that. But what you now need is that spoon and that
Water.
clean water.
So-
if you have clean tap water, you can use tap water. But if you don't, then buy one of the dead French like Evian or what's the others?
Volvic.
Volvic.
Yeah.
Is Volvic French?
I think so. Yeah.
That is German.
Volvic.
Volvic.
What I have to say here is what happens if you put water in that whiskey. Alcohol is a liquid which is able to solute several substances, and as soon as you reduce the alcohol strength, the capacity of solute something is reduced because you have more water in it. The ABV reduces, and then those things have to come out of solution, and those are the molecules you smell in your nose. So you put water in it, and immediately afterwards put your nose into the glass, and then you smell the most coming from this reducing of ABV. And this is the way why we do it and why there is cask strength. If you taste this or drink this neat, then the strong alcohol will paralyze your tasting buds, you will taste nothing. So if you are a very hard, strong man, I'm just drinking my whiskey only neat. This is completely the wrong way. You have to dilute a little bit. Even if you have 40%, you might add 2 or 3 drops of water, then you will smell more due to this solution gap, or how to call it.
So the rule of thumb is if you have above 50, you start thinking about diluting your whiskey. If you have about something like 58, like we have, do it. Do it. There are certain special ways where you can have breathing techniques so you don't get this burn that Horst talked about. Yes, but that
your
is
tongue
very
will burn.
No, you can breathe so it doesn't burn. But that's what I learned from distillers. They have to taste 70, 80% spirit and really taste what the spirit is like. There are special ways of doing that, but it's not really worth it. Just add a little bit of water. It increases the flavor a lot.
Yes.
So it's really the way to enjoy the whiskey. A little bit of dilution.
So this Laphroaig is untypical for a Laphroaig. So this is a special one. The typical Laphroaig is, I always say, stinky, and it's a hospital smell, disinfection, phenols from the hospital. And this one is bonfire. So it's just a bonfire on the beach, and a nice bonfire, not too strong, with a malty touch in the back, and a little sweetness. And this whiskey, you can't expect with the first smell this is sweet. But if you emptied your glass and leave it on your table for the next day so that everything evaporates of liquid, and then you put your nose in it, you smell really sweetness. So it's a sweet whiskey which is covered with this extreme bonfire smoke.
Yeah, I love it. For me, at the beginning, the very first time I smelled this whiskey today, it was a bit more of a ham note, a really, really smoky ham. Then you immediately go into a burned out bonfire, a little bit of ash in there, a very, marine bonfire. It's really a bonfire next to the sea, rough sea, with a bit of seaweed at the shore. I like it.
So, cheers.
Cheers.
Gentle and smooth in my mouth, and I'm well below 50, 45 something, and it's juicy, light sweetness, little cacao influence, and a lot of peatiness and smoke all over your mouth, cladding your the roof of your mouth. So
it's very smoky.
Yeah.
Really smoky. But I love it today. Really, it really kicks me the right way today. I really like it. This is usually not a beginner's whiskey.
No, not at
we
all.
put it at the very end to have a little bit of a kicker. What could be. So we started off very easy with a very nice, lovely sweet one. The next one was a little bit still Oloroso sherry, then a little bit more of a wine taste, and the last one is representing the cask strength, where you have to dilute. You can really, I could add more water now, so to change it still again. So this is what you can play with a cask strength whiskey, where you can add water and set it the way you like it. This goes really a bit more into the hobby, where you can say, I like my whiskey this way, or I like to find out in that bottle what a bottle can be.
Or today it's this, tomorrow it's the other way.
Yeah, and it changes. And this is the cask strength. And also we usually have one cask strength, one smoky one. And today it's all both in one.
Yeah, so I think now it's the time, we're close to a minute now, to have to judge how the sequence of this whiskey is in terms of how you like it. And
For me, it changed.
I had to.
For me, it
Re-smell.
changed.
Therefore, I keep always a rest in the glass to have a comparison.
Oh, now I'm really torn. It changed a lot for me. Maybe the last changed to first place now. Strangely enough, for me it's 1, 4, 2, 3. I really love the Singleton now with its lovely sweet entrance.
So in the first row, I had the Dufftown with this sherry and sweet and comfortably entrance. Then I had the Laphroaig with this intensity and smell. Then the Glenfiddich and the Jura.
That was exactly what I said.
And have it the same way now with the second round.
Yeah. Last time I was like with all the viewers were, I had it like Laphroaig, Glenfiddich, Jura and Singleton. And here we do have a few less people taking out their favorites, as there are a lot of people who already enjoy whiskey in our chat. Talking about enjoying whiskey already, tomorrow we are actually also doing a live tasting. It's going to be same time tomorrow, and I've seen there was a bit of a discussion going on with the times. Yes, we do have Central European Standard Time, and it's going to be 8 p.m. Central European Standard Time. We do taste in the evening, and yes, it would be better if we taste later because of more Americans joining in, because it will be later on that day. And yeah, one guy joined it. Hey, it's 11 a.m. in the morning. You guys are drinking. No, it's 8 p.m. in the evening in Europe already.
From Singapore, from Brazil,
Belgium.
So Belgium, so a lot of different. And there was a discussion how Christmas is celebrated. So here in Germany, we have the gifting, giving the gifts to the kids on the evening of the 24th.
Yeah.
So it's like what is called Nikolaus, where in the night from the 5th to the 6th of December, gifts are coming into the boots. So we have the evening of the 24th, then first celebration day.
First day of Christmas.
Yes, Christmas is the 25th, and there's a second day of vacation, the second one, 26th, today. And then 27 is a normal working day and going on,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it changed. So now 13 votes, and the first.
Really?
I told too early that this is my favorite. And you said as
you're
well.
An influencer.
So, yeah. Yeah.
North Dakota, USA here. Isn't North Dakota, isn't that like you also speak German or something? You could.
No, it's Pennsylvania, I think.
No, Pennsylvania, and I think is it South Dakota? I'm not quite sure. But some of them also do have a bit of German in there. So you can join the German at 1 hour earlier. But yeah, have a look. Tomorrow we're going to do a live tasting about more of a advanced live tasting where we talk about independent bottlings and kind of a Norwegian. They're speaking Norwegian in North Dakota. Okay, I'm off. Yeah, so we're doing a little bit of advanced live tasting with independent bottling, special bottlings, and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, if you want to buy it, it's already sold out. So
the small one.
The small one, the beginner's one, you can all still buy it, but the advanced one is already sold out. So,
but you can buy the big ones, the big bottles.
No, big bottle. There's one missing.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can buy all of them, but one. Yeah, the advanced a bit more special, more limited, and therefore we had ran into a little bit of a problem. So yeah, tune in tomorrow at same time. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.